Greetings and salutations, dreamers in dreamland. One more time. Greetings and salutations, dreamers in dreamland. Welcome to the latest edition of Listen to Me. Listen to Me, volume 54. And let me tell you something right now. Today is Monday, the 22nd of November, 2021. And I'm going to give you my weekend review of this past weekend's boxing. Now, we had a very big fight Saturday, and I will get to that, and I will give the roses due to both fighters in that fight. But I want to start with what happened Friday up in New Hampshire on the DAZN card in Manchester. Now, there were 4 fights. I gave you 4 picks, and I went 3 for 4. Okay, I did. I went 3 for 4. Now, one gentleman in the main event, Demetrius Andrade, he honestly impressed incredibly. He was incredibly impressive in his second round knockout of Jason Quigley. I mean, he went out there against Jason Quigley, and he left no doubts who the superior fighter was. He showed that he was levels above Jason Quigley. Unquestionably, unequivocally, undoubtedly. Demetrius Andrade, clear and away, outclassed, destroyed Jason Quigley, knocked him out in the second round. All respect to Jason Quigley for getting in there, but Demetrius Andrade, people don't realize is that right now, at 160 pounds, Demetrius Andrade is probably the most dangerous fighter. Okay, everybody knows Triple G, and everybody has heard of Charlo, who hasn't fought anyone. But Demetrius Andrade, while he hasn't fought anyone, it's not because he doesn't want to. It's because nobody wants to fight him. There was something like $7-8 million on the table for Charlo to fight Demetrius Andrade. Fight didn't happen. Not Demetrius Andrade's doing. Charlo's doing. Triple G sat out all year long waiting for his unification with Ryota Murata that will take place December 29th or 30th, right around New Year's Eve this year. And, you know, he hasn't done anything all year long. Nothing. And he won't be fighting until there are about 1 or 2 days left in this calendar year. Could have fought Demetrius Andrade. Hasn't done that. And Demetrius Andrade showed exactly why nobody wants to fight him. Knocked out Jason Quigley. I did pick Demetrius Andrade. I picked him by points decision. He put the pedal to the metal, and he got Jason Quigley out of there. Stopped that guy, ended the fight quickly. Now, the one fight on this card that I got absolutely wrong was because the outcome was something that was completely unforeseen. I picked Julio Cesar Martinez to knock out, to stop McWilliams Arroyo. I picked Julio Cesar Martinez to end the fight before the final bell against McWilliams Arroyo. And the fight did end before the final bell, but unfortunately, it ended at the very beginning of the third round. Somewhere in the first or second round, there was a head clash. I believe it was the second round, a very bad head clash that gave McWilliams Arroyo a cut right on his eye. The blood was leaking into his eye. McWilliams Arroyo did not want to fight wounded. I can't really say that I blame him because let's be honest, Julio Cesar Martinez is a brawler. He's a guy who's going to go out there and look for the knockout. And if he sees blood, he's going to go after it. When he sees red, he's going to be like a bull and he's going to go right after it. He's going to be like a shark in the water. That's who Julio Cesar Martinez is. And McWilliams Arroyo, this was a title shot for him. This was a world title fight. And to not want to fight wounded, I can understand that. And a lot of people say he looked for a way out. Look, if I got headbutted in the second round of that kind of fight, I might also look to end the fight. I might also, especially against a brawler, a guy who's going to look to, to get his glove into that cut as much as possible. If a cut is caused by a headbutt, that's one thing. But after the headbutt, the cut is still there. And then the fighter can use his fists to, open the cut and extend the bleeding and make the cut get worse as the fight goes on. That's the way it works. And McWilliams Arroyo, it was his decision. He did not want to continue. And because it was before 4 full rounds, they don't even go to the judges' scorecards. It's automatically a no contest. Now, in theory, after 4 rounds, that's where these things can get a little tricky. If the headbutt is caused, if a cut is caused by a headbutt after the completion of 4 rounds, Then let's say, a fighter is a slow starter, the champion, the challenger is up 3-1. It's the fifth, or let's say up 4-1. It's the sixth round, and a headbutt occurs. Now that fighter might be even more apt and more prone to wanting to end the fight early and wanting to, claim that the headbutt has caused such a cut where they can't continue because they feel they're up on the cards and they can swipe a quick victory. That's where it can get a little tricky. But again, that's all gamesmanship. That's all part of boxing. Reality. Love, like, or hate it, those things are part of boxing. And I do feel McWilliams Arroyo, if the cut was caused by a punch, I believe he would have found it within himself to continue. But because the cut was caused by a headbutt, and because 4 rounds were not completed, and, he wasn't going to get out of there with a loss, and it could be a no contest, and possibly he would live on to fight another day against Julio Cesar Martinez and get another payday against Julio Cesar Martinez, McWilliams Arroyo got out of there without losing the fight. Look, in the first round, McWilliams Arroyo knocked down Julio Cesar Martinez, and then Julio Cesar Martinez responded to knock down McWilliams Arroyo. This was before the headbutts. Before the headbutt. Before the cut. So it was a knockdown, drag-out brawl in the first round. And the way I saw things going, the way it looked, was that Julio Cesar Martinez was going to continue his punishment. And if it's going to be a war, Julio Cesar Martinez has the artillery and the guns to win the war. In that kind of fight, Julio Cesar Martinez has the durability, the strength, and the strength of arms. The ability to throw the punches and get the other guy out of there with better artillery. And unfortunately, we didn't get to see the ending. The ending was, cut short, and it was a no contest at the beginning of round number 3. The MJ Akhmadaliev, Jose Velasquez fight went pretty much exactly how I thought it would go. It was a unanimous decision for MJ Akhmadaliev. There were some portions of the fight where Jose Velasquez was having some success. Very durable fighter. I'll tell you, Jose Velasquez, very durable fighter, rough and tumble guy. Not what you would call, your orthodox or your typical fighter. A guy who's throwing some very strange punches, a guy who's very unorthodox, a guy who's very unique. And, it presented some challenges for MJ Akhmadaliev, but the outcome of the fight was never really in doubt. It was a unanimous decision victory. Jose Velasquez may have nicked a round or 2 or maybe even 3, but I don't think any more than that. And it was pretty much a one-sided victory for the unified champion, MJ Akhmadaliev, and I congratulate him in his dominant victory. Now, the 4th fight on this card, I actually did predict correctly. I predicted that Kaylee Reese would beat Jessica Kamaru by decision, and she did. However, I can't say I was happy that I was right. I felt that this fight was very, very close. I felt that Jessica Kamaru did enough to win the fight. I felt she won 7 rounds. I could have seen the fight going a draw. I did not see, a 97-93 or a 98-92, scorecard for Kaylee Reese. And I believe one of the judges had it 97-93 or something like that, and 98-92. I didn't see it that way at all. I thought this was a very close fight. I could have seen it 6-4 for Kaylee Reese. I'm not angry that Kaylee Reese won the fight, but the way I saw the fight was I saw Jessica Kamaru winning the fight. Was it close? Yes. Do I understand Kaylee Reese winning? Absolutely. But I felt Jessica Kamaru did enough to win that fight. However, I was correct in my prediction, and Kaylee Reese got the decision. She got the points victory. Now, we move on to the fight that took place on Saturday night in Las Vegas between 2 incredible welterweights. Former 2-time champion of the world, Shawn Porter, challenged Terence Bud Crawford, and Terence Bud Crawford, incredible. Terence Bud Crawford proved once again why he is the best American fighter of this generation. Absolutely, unequivocally. There's nobody even close. Canelo is the top pound-for-pound dog right now, and Terence Bud Crawford is right there. He, in my opinion, is number 2 on the pound-for-pound list. His accomplishments speak for themselves. And Terence Bud Crawford, he is the first person to stop Shawn Porter. Tough as nails, Shawn Porter. And, this fight was very close. After 6 rounds, all 3 of the judges, after the first half of the fight, all 3 of the judges had this fight 3 rounds apiece. All 3 of the official judges had this fight 3 rounds apiece after the first 6 rounds. Okay, it was a very close fight. And I had it scored similarly. Everybody's favorite boxing shaman, yours truly, the Dream, the one and only, the Dream. I had the fight scored after 6 rounds. I had it scored 4 rounds to 2 for Shawn Porter. That's the way everybody's favorite boxing shaman had the fight scored. And at the end of the day, my scorecard doesn't really matter, but Andre Ward had it scored similarly at that point as well. And, the judges had it scored even after the first half of the fight. Now, the second half of the fight was a little bit different of a story. The tide started to turn, things started to change, and Terence Crawford started to really get his way. And it was evident in the 10th round stoppage. Going into the 10th round, I had the fight close, but in the 10th round, Terence Crawford bounced Shawn Porter off the canvas twice. Shawn Porter got up after the second knockdown. He was responsive, but Shawn Porter's corner, Shawn Porter's father, Kenny Porter, his trainer, his corner man, saw enough. Threw in the towel, said, "That's it! Enough is enough." And listen, I agree. Look, I picked Shawn Porter to win this fight. Shawn Porter said he was channeling the spirit of Marvelous Marvin Hagler. He walked out to the ring with a Marvelous War ring robe. And he did bring the fight to Terence Crawford. But, I thought Terence Crawford may have been looking past Shawn Porter because he had went to the WBC and asked to be the mandatory for Errol Spence Jr. I thought maybe that Terence Crawford was looking past Shawn Porter because of, that type of action. However, that was not the case. Shawn Porter was the victim, the latest knockout victim of Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford has knocked out every single opponent that he's faced in the welterweight division since coming to the welterweight division. Every single opponent he's faced has not seen the final bell. Terence Crawford is the American badass. Terence Crawford proved me wrong. And look, I'll eat the crow. I don't mind. I picked against my favorite fighter because I thought my favorite fighter might have been fumbling the ball. He had a firm grip on the ball. There was no problems whatsoever. Terence Crawford did what he had to do. Shawn Porter fought a hell of a fight. A hell of a fight. And I want to give the roses to both of these fighters for their performances. I want to give Terence Crawford his congratulations for being the best American fighter in the world today. For being the best fighter of his generation, period, from the United States of America. Around his weight, there's nobody close. Hasn't been. Terence Crawford has been the man, and he is the man. Period. He's the man. Shawn Porter, I want to give him his roses and his flowers and his congratulations for bringing the fight to Terence Crawford. He hurt Terence Crawford. He hit Terence Crawford with some clean shots, some clean lead right hands. Shawn Porter brought the fight to Terence Crawford. And since losing the fight and being stopped for the first time by Terence Crawford, Shawn Porter has since retired from boxing. And I've got to say, I shed half a tear for the retirement of Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter was one of my favorite fighters to watch in the boxing ring. Each and every time he got in the boxing ring, Shawn Porter gave everything to boxing. Every single time he got in the ring. Every single time Shawn Porter laced up those gloves and put that mouthpiece in, he went out there and he gave his all. Nobody challenged Errol Spence the way Shawn Porter did. Shawn Porter's resume, okay? He beat Yordenis Ugas. He beat Paulie Malignaggi. He beat Adrian Broner. He beat Danny Garcia. He beat Adrian Granados. He beat Andre Berto. He beat Julio Diaz. Each and every one of those fighters I just named has been a world champion. All of them fell victim. All of them to Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter lost? Yes, he did. He lost to Kell Brook when Kell Brook was the who's who of the welterweight division. When Kell Brook was one of the best fighters in the world around that weight. He was the man when he beat Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter also lost to Keith Thurman, who at the time was the top welterweight in the world. When Shawn Porter lost, to Keith Thurman. When Shawn Porter lost to Keith Thurman was the man at 147. Him and Kell Brook were the best. Kell Brook was coming off a loss when Kell Brook tried to go upstairs and challenge Triple G at middleweight. So he didn't lose in the welterweight division. But, Keith Thurman at that time hadn't lost to anybody. And he just beat Danny Garcia, and then he beat Shawn Porter. So at that time, Keith Thurman was the best welterweight in the world. And Shawn Porter put up a hell of a fight. Shawn Porter put up a hell of a fight. Very close fight against Keith Thurman. A fight that I felt could have went either way. Shawn Porter's lost to Kell Brook. Yeah, he lost the fight, but it was close. I had it 7-5 for Kell Brook. I didn't see Kell Brook dominating that fight. Shawn Porter's a hell of a fighter. Shawn Porter's other loss was to, Errol Spence Jr. in a split decision. I had the fight 6 rounds apiece. I felt the knockdown that Errol Spence scored in the final round was the difference in the fight. That's how I felt. And a lot of jerk-offs, a lot of these fools, a lot of idiots think that Errol Spence Jr. is some kind of pound-for-pound, legend. In my opinion, he's not a pound. Errol Spence Jr. is not a pound-for-pound fighter, not at all. He's beaten a couple of guys at welterweight. He's unified at welterweight, that's it. And he's not very active. Flipped his car, and he's probably damaged goods. Likely damaged goods at this point. Looks like damaged goods at this point. What's going on with his eye? What's going on? I don't know what's going on with that guy. Regardless, Shawn Porter fought him before the car accident. And the very best version of Errol Spence Jr., Shawn Porter pushed that guy to the limit. To the absolute limit. Terence Crawford went out there and stopped Shawn Porter. Terence Crawford's the best fighter of this generation. And all of the losses that Shawn Porter has, the 4 losses he has, there's no shame in any of them. He lost to Kell Brook, he lost to Keith Thurman, he lost to Errol Spence Jr., and he lost to Terence Bud Crawford. He lost to some of the very best fighters at 147 pounds of this era, and a couple of them are some of the best 147-pound fighters of all time. I mean, Errol Spence Jr., a couple more victories, and his resume at 147 could be one of the best ever. Terence Bud Crawford, his resume as a fighter right now is one of the best ever. A former undisputed champion at 140 pounds. Terence Crawford has beaten the who's who from 135 to 140 to 147. Beat Ricky Burns. Beat Kell Brook. Beat Amir Khan. Beat Julius Ndongo. Beat Diaz. Beat them all. Beat them all. Line them up. Knock them down. Terence Crawford beat Shawn Porter. Stop that guy. First guy in history to stop Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter, who is an excellent fighter. In my opinion, Shawn Porter should be in the Hall of Fame in the future. I hope he is. He deserves to be. His resume, win, lose, or draw, at 147 pounds is better than anyone else's at 147 pounds today outside of Terence Bud Crawford. And I say that because Terence Bud Crawford beat Shawn Porter. Everybody else's resume at 147, win, lose, or draw, doesn't hold up to Shawn Porter's. Shawn Porter fought everyone. Everyone. And let me tell you something right now. Shawn Porter was never really the sweetheart or the baby, if you will, of the PBC. He never was. He never was. He was in a lot of tough fights. A lot of tough fights. And he won them. He won them. He won a lot of tough fights. And the toughest of the tough fights, some of them he won and some of them he lost. But he got in the ring and he gave his all. And, I salute Shawn Porter and I wish him nothing but the best in the future. I look forward to hearing his commentary on boxing fights, going forward for the PBC, for NBC, and for anywhere and everywhere that will hire Shawn Porter. I mean, Shawn Porter is a great guy, to listen to on the microphone. Real cool guy from what I've heard from people that have met him. And he seems to be very genuine. And he was a great boxer and he was always a pleasure to watch. And Terence Bud Crawford, look, I did pick against Terence Crawford, ate the crow willingly. I picked against my favorite fighter in the world and he proved me wrong. And I'm glad he did. Dreamers in Dreamland, until we meet again, my friends, I am your favorite boxing shaman. It's been a pleasure, yours, mine, and ours. And let me tell you something right now, whether you're a friend, foe, family, fan, or some other kind of fucking asshole, I love you. Ha ha! Peace.